Welcome to Easter 2020 at Spice and Friends Church. We're glad you could join us, even though you couldn't come to our sanctuary in our building, that you're able to join us online and electronically to still worship God. And so we hope that God blesses you and you have a good Easter Sunday, and we're here to celebrate Easter, and so that's what we're here for today. We hope you enjoy this message as well as the rest of the service. We have good music on the website as well as some other things that you might enjoy. Well, given the worldwide impact of the coronavirus and the extra time that all of us spend extra time listening to the news or watching the news, whichever you do, and we have to decide for ourselves whether the stuff that we're hearing is true or not true, or whether we need to throw some of it out. And I read a headline this week earlier that I decided to throw out. The headline said, "Easter canceled." The copy editor got a little bit overzealous because the article was actually about churches and that they would be empty and locked this Sunday morning on Easter Sunday. And the article went on to talk about how they were going to have electronic services, online services, Zoom services, a variety of different things. And so I thought to myself, this proves that Easter is not canceled. We're going to all this trouble to have Easter because it's so meaningful to us. So even though we cannot all gather in the same place, in our usual place of the church, Easter is not canceled. It's very much alive. The tomb is still empty. Jesus is still alive, and Jesus is still working in our life. He's loving us, caring for us, and he's sitting at the right hand of the Father, interceding for us. We celebrate these facts of the resurrection every Sunday, but particularly at Easter time, we celebrate the resurrection. So it's not canceled. It's in full force, and it is a true statement that we celebrate today. I'd like for us to focus on the very first Easter for a little while and look at the passage from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 28, verses 1 to 10. The scripture is printed for you on the website, but I'd like to read it for you because I think it has a lot of message in it for us. This is a very short and meaningful description of how Jesus rose from the dead. After the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for the angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone. And then he sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were as white as snow. The guards who were there were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead, and he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him and clasped his feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." 10 verses to tell the greatest story in the gospel, in the Bible, ever told. 10 short verses that describe succinctly and very meaningfully what happened at that tomb on that first Easter morning. The angel was dazzling in appearance, and his appearance says it was like lightning or as white as snow. And it was so dazzling, his appearance was, that these Roman soldiers, tough Roman soldiers that were charged with the responsibility of guarding the tomb, they were so frightened, it says they became like dead men. You can imagine what the women must have thought if the soldiers were that frightened. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid." And then they said a sentence of reassurance, because we know why you're here. You're looking for Jesus who was crucified. But he's not here. He's risen. This was the message that the angel got across to them. He is risen just as he said. Because you see, Jesus had told the disciples and these followers, these women that were his followers, that he was going to be crucified and die and rise on the third day. But none of them understood that. None of them believed it. None of them were looking around saying, well, on the third day, let's go see Jesus because he's going to rise up out of the tomb. They didn't understand the message that Jesus had said to them. But now the angel is confirming that. I started thinking about how many times in the New Testament angels begin their speech with, do not be afraid. It happens over and over again, particularly around the stories in the New Testament of Jesus and his birth and his life. We find that in the Old Testament it happens a lot too, but we'll just focus on the New Testament. When Zechariah was the priest, he goes into the Holy of Holies where he's supposed to meet God. That's why he's there. And the priest can only do this one time in their whole lifetime. And he's in there, and an angel appears to him. And Zacharias is frightened because God is really there. Can you imagine that? How much he must have felt? And yet that's the reason he was there. And yet he was cowering in the corner and afraid. And his angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zacharias. And then Zacharias, he told him that he and his wife, Zacharias, his wife, were going to have a child late in life. They're well past childbearing age. And Zacharias was bold enough to say to the angel, how do I know this is going to happen? At least these women didn't question the angel. They just took what he said and went off to do what he said. But Zacharias asked the angel that, and because he did, he couldn't speak for the rest of the time while his son was in the womb and being born, until he came out and he decided to name him, and then he was able to speak. So it's best not to argue with the angel if he appears to you. And then Mary and Joseph each had that experience of the angel coming to them to give them the message of what was going to happen in their lives. And each time they began their message with, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. It seems like that the message that Jesus told them, or that the angel told them about Jesus, was so succinct, so clear, and so simple that there was no argument about it. He just said, do not be afraid. He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Then he gives them a command. Come and see the place where he lay. Go quickly, and tell his disciples, he's going ahead of you into Galilee, and there you will see him. Now I have told you. So the angel concludes his speech with, now I've done my duty. I've told you. So believe it. Get going. And they did. No argument, succinct, clear message that he said. Do not be afraid. This is a common opening with the angels, but it's a common statement for us in this world. Because there's a lot to make us afraid. Because when God meets us, sometimes we're afraid of what he's going to say. We're afraid of whether we'll measure up. We're afraid of whether we'll be able to do what he asks us to do. We're afraid when we meet God. We're afraid about our life because we're afraid of the future because we don't understand it. And God brings us news all the time that requires us to trust in him, to have faith and trust in his word. One writer put it this way, the message from the angels, from God, is always restorative, empowering word of courage. This is the very essence of the gospel. Because you see, this is what Easter's about. The very essence of the gospel is the angel said, he is not here, he is risen. Do not be afraid about what this message means to you, because it's going to restore your life. It brings about forgiveness. It brings about power. This is what the angel was saying. It's a word of courage that's the very essence of the gospel. Jesus repeats those same words to the women when he sees them on the way going to see the disciples. Jesus meets them unexpectedly. They didn't expect this after seeing the angel, and he starts his speech also by do not be afraid. Usually it seems like we're fearful when we meet God in person. But we're fearful about other things in our life. We're fearful about our tomorrow, what tomorrow holds, but we then remind ourselves that we don't know what tomorrow holds, but we do know who holds tomorrow. We are worried about the times that we see around us. We're worried about our finances. We're worried about our job. We're worried about the safety of our family. We're worried about where the world's going to. Where's our country going to? What's going to happen in the future? We have a lot of reasons to be worrying. But Jesus comes to us and says, do not be afraid. And offers us hope. And offers us hope to do his will and his work in the world. Did you ever wonder why in each of the Gospels that the story of Jesus rising from the dead is told so quickly and so simply? And there's no added commentary after that. For 3 of the 4 Gospels, this is the last chapter of their Gospel. John has one more chapter after the story of the resurrection to tell the story of Peter and Jesus meeting on the beach in the Sea of Galilee. And there Jesus forgives Peter for denying him and charges Peter with carrying out his word. But most of them just stop with the story of Jesus rising from the dead, and Jesus meets the disciples and gives them hope. To me, this is the reason that this is the case. They didn't go into a lot of detail about what happened afterwards, because we're here to complete those details. It's our job to carry on Easter. Each generation, each person, each year accepts that responsibility to carry on the Easter message, to not be afraid, to trust in Jesus, to trust in the new life that he offers because of his resurrection, to trust in his ability to forgive us our sins, to trust in his ability to give us power and strength to do his will in our lives. This is what we are told. Go and tell others. Jesus told these 2 women that. He told his disciples that. And he tells us that. Go and tell others. Go and tell others and introduce them to Jesus. He told the disciples that he would see him in Galilee. And we've seen Jesus in our own lives. We've seen him work. And we can tell others about how that works, because he worked in our life, and we can lead others to see Jesus in their lives. The angel's message of the resurrection, Jesus' message of the resurrection, gives us hope and courage to face our life, no matter what our fears. We can take to heart the promise, the command to do not be afraid. We don't need to fear. We need to put our faith and trust in the risen Jesus Christ. He may not take away our fears, but he does offer courage and hope by anchoring us in his love and in his grace. This morning, on Easter morning, let's take a few moments to listen to God. We always end our service this way, to listen to God and to be prepared to listen to him and to pray to him and ask him how this message might fit for us. So as we shut the camera off and you in your own home have your own time of worship as you listen to God.